Development, Karina Gould, Minister of Northern Affairs, Dan Vandal, and Nunavut Minister of Education, Pamela. So we'll start with a reading, I believe, and then we'll take questions. We'll have 20 minutes of questions with the Prime Minister, and the Minister will stay for 10 more minutes. You now have the floor. Nunavut.
Okay, look, everybody, taba, kukalimakan nakta, ukyok taktong umayang. Nakisiwa, yeah, having, look, nakisiwa, having, unalakisiwa, unakisiwa, yeah, tutu. Look, taba. Unalakisiwa. Nano, what does the nano say? Unalakisiwa. Ukale. Unalakisiwa. Tilde. You've seen lots of them. Yeah, fox. Look, last one. Amago, yay!
Good morning. Oud l'écoute et bonjour. I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. Merci d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. As Minister of Northern Affairs, as well as Minister for Canadian Northern Economic Development, I am very pleased to be starting off today's historic announcement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm joining you from my constituency office in Winnipeg, at Saint-Boniface-Saint-Vital, homeland of the Métis Nation and Treaty 1 territory, and a city that is now home to many Inuit. Our priority as a government has been to make life more affordable for Canadians. And today we are delivering on that promise along with the government of Nunavut. Together we are taking important steps that will have a positive and a long-lasting impact on communities in Nunavut and across this country. I'm very pleased to welcome the Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, to make this historic announcement. Mr. Prime Minister.
Merci Dan. Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning.
Good morning.
Je suis très heureux d'être ici avec les ministres Vandal et Gould, but it's also good to see Premier Akeeagok and Minister Grass as well. All Canadians deserve high-quality, affordable childcare. The rising cost of living, we need to continue to be there to support families from coast to coast to coast. That's exactly what we're doing. We have good news to announce today that we've reached an agreement with Nunavut that will cut average childcare fees in half by the end of this year and meet the $10 a day target by March 2024, that is 2 years ahead of the federal schedule. The savings on childcare for families in Iqaluit is estimated at around $14,000 a year. And the government of Nunavut will create 238 new spaces by 2026. Nunavut has been working constructively with us from the very beginning, and I want to thank Premier Akeeagok for his collaboration and his leadership. I know there are specific and direct challenges in the North, and that's where we've been so pleased to be able to work together to reach this landmark agreement. But I also want to thank the educators for everything they do as well in the North. Matna Koana Kuyanamik Pe Rivivut. Thank you to all of our daycares. We'll continue working with representative Inuit organizations to ensure that children have access to Inuit-specific Indigenous childcare through Indigenous early learning and childcare as well. On est là pour les familles et pour la classe moyenne. Aucune mère, aucun parent ne devrait avoir à choisir entre leur famille et leur carrière. C'est pour ça que ces ententes vont aider les parents à la grandeur du pays. This is the 12th agreement signed with provinces and territories right across the country. We are closer than ever before to a national early learning and childcare program. The reduction of fees have been announced and are already impacting on families in places like Nova Scotia, Alberta, Prince Edward Island, and Saskatchewan. And I think back to the families and the educators I've met across the country as we've worked on these deals, on these agreements to support people. This is a game changer for so many families to see childcare fees cut in half by the end of this year, to know that $10 a day childcare, affordable, high quality, more spaces, supported educators are only a few years away and getting to work on now. These are things that are going to make a massive difference at a time when we know Canadians are facing rising costs for so many things. Dropping the prices of childcare in places where childcare fees have always been far too high is going to make a huge difference in the lives of kids who will access high quality education to be able to start grade 1 of the best possible way. Families, not just supporting in terms of affordability, but also being able to make those choices about resuming careers or engaging in the career that you've always wanted. And for our economy as well, making sure there are more women joining the workplace, more choices, better opportunities for people to re-engage. These are things that are going to help grow our economy at a time where we are looking for people to fill good jobs across the country. I'm excited about this announcement and look forward to the impact it's going to make in real families right across the country. Today, we're beginning a 3-day cabinet retreat. Obviously, we'll be talking about COVID, about the economy, about housing, about growing the middle class, about climate change, and about global issues important to Canadians and important to the world. We will continue throughout being focused on delivering real positive change for Canadians because, like we've shown with childcare, governments that work together and step up can make a real impact in Canadians' health, well-being, and economic future. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Je suis très content maintenant de céder la parole au Premier ministre Akeeagok. Happy to pass it over to you, PJ.
Koyaname udlakon, koyaname tavane katitunya unami gatam. Tan kitongwa kolovon sivuni sarigatigon. Ako sivuni sangin piukunyagotigo asura rigahagatigon. Udlakon, the investments that we make into our children today determine our future. Culturally relevant early learning and childcare are fundamental to raising happy, healthy, and resilient children. That we just saw just this morning how cute those children were here. By providing early learning informed by our culture, language, and traditions, led by childcare workers rooted in our communities, we foster a love of learning and a lifetime of positive development. Takwa pairevivon inuin ilikushinginin ilikushinginin amma uqawsitinin tungavqariaqarpun. Takwa duqanayatingin nunalitinin ngasimagiaqarpun. I am really excited to join Prime Minister Trudeau, along with Minister Vandal, Minister Gould, as well as my Deputy Premier, Minister Gross, to celebrate the signing of the Canada-wide early learning and childcare agreement between our two governments. Through this agreement, we have secured $66.1 million over the next 5 years for early learning and childcare in Nunavut. This funding will bolster Nunavut sector and provide a significant investment in our children and our families. Most importantly, this funding will allow families with children in licensed daycares to access affordable and reliable childcare. In the past 3 years, living with COVID and grappling with homeschooling, we have seen more than ever before the importance of daycares and childcare workers. Reliable childcare is vital, keeping our territory running. It allows parents, especially mothers, to carry out essential jobs, to upgrade their credentials, and to continue to pursue their educational opportunities. I know that the pandemic has had an economic impact on Nunavut, making it harder for families to make ends meet. As such, we have put a significant portion of this agreement towards lowering the daycare fees. By end of this year, parents will see their daycare fees cut by half, and by March 2024, these fees will be reduced to $10 a day. Unfortunately, many of our communities are still lacking in childcare infrastructure. Be assured that you have not been forgotten. I will continue to work very hard with the Prime Minister to address the need for childcare infrastructure in our territory. Together, we could ensure that every community in Nunavut has a daycare to rely upon. I'm proud of the important step we have taken today to improve access to childcare. I know safe and affordable childcare and daycares will give our children a head start in life and yield a positive outcome for families and our communities. Hoyan namin.
Hi, and thank you so much, Premier. I'm very delighted to join you all today, and I am joining you today from Burlington, Ontario. The territory is mutually covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and other allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which I am joining you from is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. It is truly a pleasure and an honor to be with the Prime Minister and making this historic announcement. I also want to acknowledge Premier Akeeagok and Minister Gross for their strong partnership in bringing this agreement to fruition. I only wish that I was there with you in person. I would have loved to take part in that story time, but alas, we'll have to join you another time in person. Il est évident que des services de garde d'enfants abordables et accessibles sont essentiels. Sans accès à des services de garde, trop de parents, surtout des mères, ne peuvent pas participer pleinement au marché du travail. Which is why our government will continue to work with provinces, territories, and Indigenous partners to ensure that all families have access to affordable, inclusive, and high-quality early learning and childcare, no matter where they live. Today, Nunavut joins 11 other provinces and territories as we build our Canada-wide early learning and childcare system. Currently, parents are paying between $45 and $65 per day in childcare fees across the territory. Through the investment announced today, parents will see a 50% fee reduction on average for licensed childcare spaces by the end of the year, with the goal of reaching an average of $10 a day childcare by March 2024. That's 2 years ahead of the federal target. Économiser des centaines de dollars par mois, c'est énorme pour les familles. Et il est très important d'avoir accès à des places en service de garde de qualité dans sa communauté. Which is why we will also create 238 new licensed not-for-profit and home-based childcare spaces over the next 5 years. And as the Premier mentioned, we're committed to working together to make sure there are childcare available in all communities across Nunavut. Les travailleuses en garderie jouent un rôle crucial dans la mise en place d'un système pan-canadien d'apprentissage et de garde des jeunes enfants. Une grille salariale sera également créée afin de promouvoir des salaires équitables pour les travailleurs du secteur de l'apprentissage et de la garde des jeunes enfants au Nunavut, et de leur fournir les outils, les ressources et la formation dont ils ont besoin pour réussir. I want to take this opportunity to commend Nunavut for making concrete efforts in supporting the workforce through higher wages. Without a well-compensated and supported workforce of early childhood educators, none of this would be possible. Finally, we know that for Inuit children, early learning and childcare that is grounded in their language, culture, and ways of knowing provides the best start in life. This agreement embeds the importance of collaboration with Inuit partners to ensure that all children who need it have access to Inuit-specific early learning and childcare. As the Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development, and as a mom myself, I am incredibly proud of the significant progress we have made in improving access to early learning and childcare services and programs across Canada. I look forward to working with Nunavut as we continue to make progress on this agreement and support families across the territory as we reach the goal of an average of $10 a day childcare. I want to conclude by thanking the Nunavut and federal officials who worked tirelessly over the past few weeks to make this announcement possible. I'll now turn it over to Minister Gross to say a few words. Thank you. Merci. Nakomik.
Ublatiak, nunat tikiamik pivachamun, nunat tikiak juk hannun, ihuak hiutiniak duk inuhiriainun. Better access to affordable, high quality, and culturally relevant childcare will improve the lives of Nunavut. It provides a solid foundation for our youth, more employment opportunities, higher income for families, and supportive environment for learning Inuktitut at an early age. I'm happy today that we're taking the next big step towards this reality. It's an honor to share this announcement with Prime Minister Trudeau, Premier Akeeagok, Minister Vandal, and Minister Gould. By December 2022, the Department of Education will establish a 50% reduction in childcare fees for children under the age of 6. By the end of 2024, we are also eager to implement $10 per day childcare for Nunavut. As part of this agreement over the next 5 years, we're also committing to the creation of 238 licensed early learning and childcare spaces. Our childcare workers are fundamental to the success of early learning programs. We're committed in investing to train and grow this workforce. In addition, we'll invest up to 25% of the federal funding to increase wages for early child care workers. This agreement and funding will foster our important relationship with Inuit organizations. It will create more opportunities for partnership and collaboration, including the development of an early learning and child care framework and more Inuktitut early learning resources. I would like to recognize the hard work that the negotiation teams put into this agreement. They have worked tirelessly to ensure that Nunavut have affordable, accessible, inclusive, and high-quality childcare. The investments with this agreement will have positive, long-lasting effects for our families today and for generations to come. Juana.
Dan, you're on mute.
Thank you so much, Minister Gross. And today's announcement is really wonderful news for families across Nunavut. This now concludes the formal announcement, and we will move to a moderated media availability. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Minister Vandal. So, like I said, we'll proceed to questions. Seeing there are no questions in the room, we'll go to the phone. A reminder that it's 20 minutes, of questions with the Prime Minister, and the Ministers Gould and Vandal will be also available for an extra 10 minutes afterwards. Alors, opérateur, c'est à vous.
Thank you. Merci. Please press star 1 at this time if you have a question, s'il vous plaît. Appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. And the first question is from Annie Bergeron-Oliver from CTV National News. Please go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my question. This is for the Prime Minister. Given the rising tensions in Ukraine, has anyone in the Canadian government told diplomats, embassy staff, or their families to prepare for an evacuation from Ukraine?
We are following the situation in Ukraine extremely closely, have been alongside our partners and allies around the world. We are extremely concerned about the Russian aggression and the ongoing threat of further invasion into Ukraine. That is why we've worked with our diplomats, our military in place and around the world to ensure that we're doing everything we can, whatever eventuality comes up. There are many contingency plans in place. The safety of Canadian diplomats and their families is, of course, paramount, and we will continue to be there for Ukraine and ensure the safety of Canadians and Ukrainians.
Thank you for that. And I apologize that my follow-up is not about the announcement as well. Sorry. My question again is for the Prime Minister. NATO allies are upping their presence of Ukraine on Ukraine's eastern borders. The U.S. president is apparently considering deploying several thousand U.S. troops in addition to warships and aircraft to Ukraine. Will Canada be offering weapons and boots on the ground?
As I have said, we continue to work very, very closely with the government of Ukraine and with our partners in the region to make sure that we continue to demonstrate that we stand steadfastly by our friends in Ukraine. We will be there to continue to support Ukrainian people as we have over the past many years with military training missions, with direct support, economic, financial, with trade agreements, with strong people-to-people ties. We will continue to work closely with the government of Ukraine to ensure they get the support they need, and I'm sure there will be more announcements to come.
Prochaine question.
Thank you. The next question is from Jackie McKay from CBC. Please go ahead.
Hi there. The current wait time for daycares in Akeeagok is 2 years. The vast majority of residents rely on non-licensed home care. How does this announcement help those residents who have their children in non-registered daycares?
First of all, this announcement is about cutting in half the fees that parents are currently paying for childcare in the north, and indeed within 2 or 3 years, get down to $10 a day, even as we increase the support for early childhood educators who we know are at the center of this and create more spaces. But for further details, I'm happy to pass it over to Minister Gould and the ministers from the north.
So thank you, Prime Minister. Perhaps I can start and then the Premier and Minister Gross can add in there. We do recognize that we also need to grow the number of spaces, which is why the government of Nunavut has committed to increasing by 238 the number of spaces available in Nunavut over the next 5 years. Although we recognize that there are also specific infrastructure challenges in Nunavut, and one of the kind of next steps and further areas of work between the Government of Canada and the Government of Nunavut is to identify where those growth opportunities are. The Government of Nunavut will also be doing more to collect data on where children are right now and hopefully move them into licensed care eventually. That is really the objective. The Government of Nunavut remains committed to increasing the number of spaces available. And as the Government of Canada, we will be there to work with them in partnership and collaboration to achieve that, because we do want to ensure that all children in Nunavut who require childcare have access to quality, safe, inclusive care in the territory. So I'll leave it there, but I'm sure my colleagues might have more to add.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. As a father to 3 children who've gone through the daycare, I know firsthand in terms of the importance early childhood plays on this one. So with that, that's obviously why I worked very hard with Prime Minister Trudeau to come to this announcement today in terms of really bringing forward affordability into the hands of the parents who need it most. So I understand that there's a huge demand in terms of the service our early childhood educators provide right across the territory. So with that, I'll perhaps get Minister Gross to provide the details in terms of the specifics in the agreement, in terms of the alleviation of the wait time. So Minister Gross.
Juana, for the question. The department assessed what was feasible based on the capital and operational constraints, and the number of new spaces was determined to be 238 across Nunavut. 238 is based on our ability to license more day homes, the creation of spaces in schools, and to have underutilized facilities and use community venues for new childcare spaces. While the agreement only requires the creation of 238 spaces, the Department of Education is committed to exploring other opportunities for the creation of even more spaces, including potential partnerships with Inuit organizations. Juana.
Follow-up?
Thank you. I'm also wondering, with the creation of the new spaces, how Nunavut plans on hiring licensed professionals to run those spaces.
I will turn it right over to PJ and Minister Gross.
Yeah, that's something that's obviously was flagged in terms of the importance in terms of investing with educators. So perhaps if I could get Minister Gross to provide a bit more of the details in terms of the investments that we'll be making in education specifically. So Minister Gross.
Juana, for that question. There are 2 main areas where we really see significant ways to improve. And first of all, to supplement our workers and have developing a wage grid for the workers that are currently working and also the new employees that will be hired. And this wage grid will reflect education, training, and years of experience for ELCC educators at every level. It'll also improve wage fairness, and there will also be incentive for certification and professionalism. We also have a wage grid that will improve recruitment and retention to help build the ELC career opportunities in Nunavut. And another opportunity that we are going to foster will be training and certification. The Department of Education will be working to establish more options for ELCC advanced training according to established standards. So this training will include training related to specific Inuit culture and language childcare, also trauma-enforced childcare focused on the context of foster children. We will also include equality for childcare for racialized children, and inclusion for children living with disabilities, children needing enhanced or individual supports. So within the first 2 years of this agreement, we'll review options for more future work towards the formation certificate in the 3 to 5 years of the agreement. Juana.
Prochaine question.
Thank you. La prochaine question est de Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. La parole est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. déjà qu'on a un problème avec nos chaînes d'approvisionnement, est-ce que vous êtes inquiet que les nouvelles mesures à la frontière pour les camionneurs non vaccinés fassent encore plus gonfler l'inflation?
Le plus grand risque à nos chaînes d'approvisionnement et à notre économie, c'est la COVID. Et donc, la meilleure façon d'assurer la résilience dans nos chaînes d'approvisionnement et dans notre économie, c'est la vaccination. Nous savons que les camionneurs sont vaccinés à peu près presque 90% à travers le pays. Et nous allons continuer de s'assurer qu'on fait tout ce qu'on peut pour empêcher que la COVID fasse ravage, c'est-à-dire d'encourager tout le monde de se faire vacciner.
Mais qu'est-ce que vous allez faire concrètement là, pour que nos chaînes d'approvisionnement ne soient pas affectées par ces camionneurs qui ne peuvent plus transporter des biens? Parce qu'il y a beaucoup de gens qui s'inquiètent, là.
Bien, je comprends, mais comme j'ai dit, presque 90% des camionneurs au Canada sont vaccinés. On sait que la meilleure façon de continuer d'empêcher des interruptions dans nos chaînes d'approvisionnement, c'est justement que tout le monde se fasse vacciner. C'est pour ça qu'on est content de pouvoir souligner l'appui du plus grande association de camionneurs au Canada, le Canadian Alliance, Trucking Alliance, qui a démontré que oui, ils sont tout à fait d'accord avec ce mandat de vaccination, que leurs membres sont prêts à être là pour s'assurer que les Canadiens reçoivent les denrées nécessaires. Je regrette que le Parti conservateur et des politiciens conservateurs sont en train d'augmenter des peurs pour les Canadiens par rapport aux chaînes d'approvisionnement. Mais la réalité, c'est que la vaccination, c'est la façon qu'on va passer à travers. Malheureusement, quelque chose sur lequel le Parti conservateur n'est pas prêt à s'avancer.
Prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Christy Kirkup, the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Just on another matter as well, Prime Minister, I'm wondering why haven't you been willing to engage with the territories and the provinces about the federal health transfer? I know you have said that you're waiting until after the pandemic is over to engage in these discussions, but I'm wondering why wait when COVID-19 has underscored that the healthcare system and its capacity has been stretched too thin?
First of all, Christy, that's absolutely not true. We have actually spent the last 2 years engaging directly with the provinces and territories on funding for health. Indeed, on top of the about $43 billion we transfer every year for healthcare systems across the country, we've actually spent $63 billion more on health-related expenses, some in transfers to provinces, some in terms of paying for vaccines and treatments and a range of things. We have been there to respond to this crisis in our healthcare system. And I have said repeatedly, we will be there to invest more into the future in the Canada Health Transfer. But while we are in the middle of fighting this acute crisis, we are making sure we are there with the supports that are immediately needed and look forward to those conversations about the longer term in due course.
But Prime Minister, on the federal health transfer, when might that specific discussion take place, given we don't know when the pandemic is going to come to an end? And I'm wondering if you could give us any insight into your thinking around stipulations that you might have in mind for the territories and the provinces in terms of results that you'd like to see in exchange for an increase to the federal health transfer.
I think one of the things we've seen across the country is Canadians expect their healthcare systems to be able to give them the support necessary, whether it's during a pandemic or outside of the pandemic. So the conversations that we're having with provinces and territories that are ongoing around healthcare systems are focused on delivering real results for Canadians. I think that's what Canadians expect of all their orders of governments working together, and that's what we're going to stay focused on.
Prochaine question.
Thank you. La prochaine question est de Olivier Ferron-Boissé de TVA Nouvelles. La parole est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Le Royaume-Uni qui a annoncé la fin des tests de dépistage à l'arrivée à l'aéroport en réponse à une demande du secteur aérien. C'est le cas aussi ici, notamment à l'aéroport Pearson qui demande la même chose. Et Dr Taminou nous disait la semaine dernière qu'il c'est encore important de surveiller notamment l'arrivée de nouveaux variants. Je me demandais si vous êtes encore de cet avis-là et si vous voudriez une nouvelle recommandation de la santé publique dans le contexte actuel avec ce qui se fait aussi ailleurs en ce moment.
Le dépistage à nos frontières continue d'être, comme vous dites, un outil important pour savoir s'il y a des nouveaux variants, pour connaître le taux d'importation du virus dans notre pays. Et nous devons continuer de faire du dépistage. Quel niveau de dépistage qu'on est en train de faire est toujours quelque chose qui est en train d'être évalué par les experts, par les gens de Santé Canada et de Santé publique Canada. Nous allons continuer de travailler avec nos partenaires, dont les aéroports, pour s'assurer qu'on garde les Canadiens en sécurité. Notre priorité sera toujours de protéger les gens ici au Canada, de protéger les Canadiens du virus. C'est ce qui nous a guidés depuis les tout débuts, mais nous allons suivre la science par rapport à comment nous allons allouer nos ressources et collecter les bonnes données.
Mais il y a même des scientifiques qui vont dire que dans le contexte actuel, avec les variants Omicron qui est un peu partout, c'est peut-être plus autant nécessaire d'y aller de façon systématique dans les aéroports. Est-ce que les gens de l'industrie peuvent s'attendre à une nouvelle à des modifications à la mesure dans les prochains jours?
Je peux vous assurer que les experts de santé publique et les chercheurs et les médecins sont en train de se pencher directement sur cette question.
Prochaine question.
Thank you. Once again, please press star 1 if you have questions. De nouveau, n'hésitez pas à appuyer sur étoile 1 pour toute question. The next question is from Abigail Beeman from the Global News. Please go ahead.
Good morning. Question for the Prime Minister. Specifically on Ukraine, I'm wondering if you're going to start to evacuate diplomatic families. I heard your answer to Annie, but specifically around the families as the U.S. has moved to do.
We will make determinations based on safety on the ground, based on the concerns we have around a potential Russian invasion. We obviously continue to work very, very hard on a diplomatic track, on an international track to try and get Russia to de-escalate. But we will always look very closely at what we need to do to ensure the safety of Canadians and their families working in Ukraine.
And on the decision to send weapons, I heard you say that, there may be more announcements in the future, but I'm wondering how much longer you will wait to make that decision as Ukraine has been calling for this help now.
One of the things that we announced last week was something that the Ukrainian president and officials had been asking for directly, which is economic supports. We have agreed to a sovereign loan of about $120 million to the government of Ukraine to help counter some of the economic destabilization efforts that Russians are engaged in. We're going to continue to be there to respond in ways that we can to supporting Ukraine. This is something that matters deeply to us. And I can tell you that we will be looking at the situation in Ukraine as part of our cabinet discussions over the next 3 days.
We have time for one last question and a follow-up for the Prime Minister.
Thank you. So the last question will be from Tonda McCharles from Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Prime Minister. On childcare, can you tell us what specifically is preventing the federal government from reaching a deal with Ontario on childcare?
Thanks, Tonda. We have been ready to reach an agreement with Ontario for many, many months now. The frame of the agreement has been set out for a long time. We have set up both agreements that work in all provinces and territories except Ontario, because we know that families need and deserve the support. In Ontario, people are facing higher childcare costs than anywhere else in the country, which makes the billions of dollars the federal government is ready to invest in early learning and childcare in Ontario more important than ever. There are parts of this country, many different provinces, in which childcare costs are already being cut for families by hundreds of dollars a month. And yet Ontario still hasn't been able to reach the agreement that we have laid out before them. We are really hopeful, for the sake of Ontario families, that we're going to be able to get to this agreement quickly and soon. The federal government is ready, has been ready for a long time. Families in Ontario are ready and eager to see childcare costs decrease. We're all just waiting on the government of Ontario.
That doesn't specifically answer what's the impediment to the deal. So if you can answer that, that'd be great. But what is your message then to Ontario voters ahead of a provincial election when both sides, and it takes two, cannot reach a deal?
We are still optimistic we're going to be able to reach a deal because Ontario families need it so badly. They pay some of the highest childcare fees in the country. We laid out a amount of about $30 billion in last year's budget and segmented that out proportionately across the country. That is the envelope of money, a little over $10 billion that we are ready to send to Ontario for early learning and childcare. We very much hope that the Ontario government decides that it is in both their interests and mostly the interests of Ontarian families to move forward in slashing childcare prices immediately, childcare costs immediately for families by supporting educators with a stronger wage grid, creating new spaces across Ontario for families that need it, and ensuring that we get to $10 a day within 5 years. The federal money is there. We just need the government of Ontario to move forward.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Trudeau. Je pense que c'est tout le temps qu'on a avec vous. We'll continue with 10 minutes of questions with Minister Vandal and Gould. So, operator, you can go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. The next question from Ryan Tumulty, the National Post. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this question is for Minister Gould. Minister, I'm wondering, the Prime Minister just got a question about what's holding up the negotiations with Ontario. I'm wondering if you can provide more light on that. Specifically, I'm wondering if the federal government's willing to credit Ontario for its kindergarten system being different than some of the other provinces.
Well, thanks for the question. And as the Prime Minister has said, we have now managed to reach agreements with 12 provinces and territories. Of course, we're thrilled with reaching the agreement with Nunavut today, and it's going to make a huge difference for children and families in Nunavut. And we would like to do the same in Ontario. We have been available and there at the table, ready and willing to have these conversations. I think we're seeing families across the country that are now going to be able to access affordable, quality, inclusive daycare. And it's important to note that this is specifically an agreement about early learning and childcare. It is meant to be additive to what is already existing in provinces and territories. And so we've been very clear from the beginning that kindergarten is beyond the scope of the agreement. That has been clear since we sent the provinces and territories our initial offer back last spring, and that remains clear. And so, the Ontario has a population of 0 to 4-year-olds who, are paying, their parents are paying some of the highest fees in the country. We want to be able to deliver this agreement for families in Ontario, just as we have now in the other 12 provinces and territories right across the country.
I think you were probably more directly involved on the day-to-day level on this negotiation than the Prime Minister. Do you think a deal can be reached, or should Ontario voters be voting for someone different in the spring election if they really want a deal?
Look, I really believe that there is a good offer on the table for families and providers in Ontario. It's $10.2 billion that is going to be able to reduce fees by 50% within the first year, reaching $10 a day on average by year 5. It will be able to increase spaces in the province of Ontario. So if, people are asking, is this possible in Ontario? Absolutely, it is. And we've seen that every other jurisdiction in Canada has been able to reach an agreement with the federal government. And the other thing that I would just add is that we have been very considerate and thoughtful about the existing ecosystem of childcare in each province and territory, and really trying to work with the province and territory to reflect their needs. Nunavut is a great example in the sense that, because of certain challenges and the existing context, we've been flexible in terms of how we are going to roll out childcare in Nunavut because we know it needs to work for the province and territory concerned. We are excited to do that with Ontario because we want to be able to deliver this for families in Ontario. So is an agreement possible? Absolutely, yes. And we want to sign one with Ontario.
Prochaine question.
Thank you. The next question from Jackie McKay from CBC. Please go ahead. Ms. McKay, please go ahead.
Hi there. I was wondering how currently private daycares in Nunavut, if they will have to switch over to not-for-profit organizations to be able to access this funding.
So thank you for the question. Nunavut has a completely not-for-profit daycare system, and the expansion will be completely not-for-profit, but I would invite my colleagues in Nunavut to add anything if they would like.
And that's Minister Grass would be best suited to answer that particular question.
Juana, for that question, Jackie. The day homes that will be non-for-profit, and they'll be able to be business as usual, Juana.
I'm hoping you can elaborate a little bit on that. I'm wondering that, as I've said, that most daycares in Nunavut are home-based, non-licensed daycares. If those facilities want to become registered in order to access the funding, what exactly will they need to do?
Ross?
Juana, for that follow-up. To anyone who wants to establish a day home, we will work directly with those people who want to create those spaces for Nunavut to send their children to these other spaces that we're so badly in need of. We need daycare spaces in all of our communities across the territory. As stated before, there are some communities that do not have either a daycare or day homes in our communities. And it is our priority to work with individuals, that whether they be a not-for-profit or individuals who'd like to start their own business, to create those spaces. And our top priority is to ensure that we have those spaces for Nunavut to send their children and to work with the communities at hand. Juana.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. The next question from Tandama Charles from Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm not sure who can answer this, but I'd just like to understand the scope of the capacity challenge in Nunavut. As I understand it, as of 2019, there was only about 22% of children under 5 years old in any kind of regulated childcare. So what does 238 spaces do in terms of addressing the other, nearly 80% of children in that under 5 cohort that don't have access to licensed care? And so how big a dent does 238 new spaces make?
I can, or Premier, go ahead.
Yeah, as if obviously I think right from the beginning, our realities in Nunavut were paramount in terms of with the importance we put of early childhood and the lack of infrastructure we have. There's a lot of barriers that we've seen, and that's something we had to bring forward immediately in terms of our partners with the federal government. In terms of the 238, perhaps Minister Gross would be better suited in terms of responding what impact that's going to have. But the realities were factored in as part of the discussion with the federal government of bringing affordable and reliable childcare right across the territory. With 25 remote communities that we have, there's many that do not have the basic infrastructure to be able to house a daycare. So with that in mind, that's something the department's going to work extremely hard on directly with the communities. And just having just finished a retreat with the full caucus here with a consensus style government. Education and early childhood were a priority theme that was noted. So we'll do everything within our powers as a new government as we prepare for the throne speech on what we're able to do in terms of investments in early childhood. But this is something that's obviously a historic moment for us to be able to sign this agreement to see the fruition of the investments that we'll see right across. But perhaps if I could get Minister Gross to elaborate a bit more on the impact of the 238 positions.
Juana, for the question. So the federal government wanted Nunavut to commit to creating 1,600 new childcare spaces in 5 years. And this is a number based on 59% of Nunavut's 0 to 12 population. So Nunavut has one of the highest populations under the age of 25, with over 50% of our population in that frame. And this is a reality that we face across our territory, and the challenges to meet those targets can seem unrealistic, but we're very committed to making sure that they are realistic, because this is something that this agreement will ensure with the direct funds to support these facilities and the creation of these more spaces across our communities is what we really want. Most places are non-for-profit, and that comes with challenge for those non-for-profits. Most times parents have to be the ones fundraising for their children to secure the spot in the daycare facility, and these parents have full-time jobs. They might have 1 or 2 children or more, or could be going to school. And these challenges across our territory with our low population and the number of people that are trained really come of hindrance, and this agreement will ensure that we're able to meet a lot of different challenges and directly target people to become educated in ELCC and work in our facilities across the territory. Juana.
So if I understand what you're saying,
Tonda, I was just going to add into that, just on a couple of points, is that in Nunavut there are specific infrastructure challenges. So like literally with spaces available to have a childcare center, but then also with regards to the workforce. And I think one of the things that's really important in the agreement with Nunavut is that close to a quarter of the funding will go towards increasing wages for ECEs, which is really important both in terms of attracting and then retaining ECEs in the territory, because we can't create more spaces if you don't have the workforce. And so while the number 238 represents about a 20% increase, there are about 1,000 licensed childcare spaces in Nunavut right now. We are committed and continuing to work together to identify opportunities for further growth, because we recognize that we need to grow the system. And so both the governments of Nunavut and the government of Canada will continue to work together to pursue those objectives. But we also need to ensure that we have the physical spaces as well as the ECEs to actually grow the number of quality inclusive spaces available for children.
Very quick follow-up, and then we'll end there. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Just so then the 238 new spaces out of the 1,600 that the feds wanted, is there any guarantee that they will be in all of the spread out among all the 25 communities the Premier referenced, or are they going to be concentrated in the higher populated places like Akeeagok?
No, that's a very good question. Perhaps if I could get Minister Gross in terms of the selections of those communities. But I just wanted to add as well that when Her Excellency Mary Simon provided the throne speech, we were very thrilled to be able to see the reference specifically to the infrastructure gap to allow early childhood in our communities specifically referenced. And I think really puts the emphasis in terms of our willingness, obviously, to work with the federal government to address that specifically. I come from the most northern community and the smallest community of Grise Fjord, up in Ellesmere Island, where there's no facility, as an example, and the challenge that we see of providing assistance to those communities. So obviously, the breakdown in terms of where those 238 positions go, I'll get Minister Gross to elaborate further on that.
Anna, for the question. I think one of the ways in which we're really going to ensure that we're able to meet the challenge is to, when we're creating new infrastructure like schools, to include spaces that have daycare facilities added on. And that's a new concept that the schools up to right now, our new school that's being established in Akeeagok will have that capacity to have the daycare in the school, which means that Akeeagok Miut have that capacity to freely send their children to daycare, as it's a constraint in the community right now and a challenge. So having space that integrates daycare is a very big priority. And so any types of infrastructure where we can work with our communities and where we are building that infrastructure for the government and for the communities, we'll see those spaces increase. And each community has its own challenges and needs, and there are needs in each community, and we're going to work to assess what those needs are. And going forward, I know we'll be able to create more space and to meet the targets that we have. And we look forward to this whole agreement and being able to, as said before, have more retention with increased wages and training opportunities, and have an overall well-rounded plan that comes with funds to secure this opportunity for Nunavut Miut. Kwana.
All right, thank you very much. This ends this press conference. Thank you so much to the Premier and the ministers for staying a little bit longer. So have a great day, everyone. Merci tout le monde.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merci. The conference has now ended. La conférence est maintenant terminée. Please disconnect your lines at this time. Veuillez s'il vous plaît raccrocher votre ligne. Thank you for your participation. Merci à tous les participants qui se sont joints.